We're going to talk about complete factoring today, and we're going to go through some new techniques you can use to help you with factoring. Exercise 1, which we're going to start at, is just reviewing some of the properties we talked about before when we talked about FOIL and multiplying binomials and distributing. So I'm just going to do the first one. Pretty much what you want to do is you want to focus on the parentheses first, simplify that. So we have x squared plus 7x plus 4x for the inside 2, and then we have 28. Now you just can't forget that you got the 2 out in front still. So it ends up being x squared plus 11x plus 28. And then what you'd have to do is distribute the 2 through. So you'd end up with 2x squared plus 22x plus 56. And that would be simplified, or as they call it, simplest form. Because really there's no more mathematical steps that we have to do. Now we're going to look at some, like exercise 2, where you want to find different ways to factor. And exercise 2 is going to allow us to do greatest common factor first. So I'm going to write this one down under B. So a lot of times there can be factorizations that can be correct for both. I would, for this question, honestly take everything. They're all even numbers. See if you can divide by something. In this case, 2. You get 2, and then you have x squared minus 2x minus 3. And then from there, you can take what's in the parentheses and see if that can be factored. So I know it's a negative last number, so that means I'm going to do a negative and positive. And then you just kind of play around with the numbers. In this case, I'm thinking for this one, my initial guess is going to be -3 and +1, because I got a negative in the middle. So if I do check that middle one, I got -3x and 1x, which is -2. So that does work. So this would be the complete factorization. Now, if you look at the examples they gave us here and here that they factored, actually those are the same. They're just missing that second step. So if I was to divide the first set of parentheses by 2, I have a 2 that goes out in front. Then I have x minus 3 and x plus 1. And if you look at the second one, I can divide this factorization by 2. And then the same thing, I just have x plus 1 and x minus 3. So I can have it either way because of the commutative property, because we're talking about multiplication. So let's try one of the examples below in exercise 3. And we'll do A and we'll do D. So for A, I notice there's a 4 in front, so I'm going to try to divide all those by 4, which in this case I can do. So I have x squared plus 3x minus 10. And then again, like I just talked about with the last question, I have a negative last number. So 10 can be 5 times 2. And I noticed I had a positive middle number, so it looks like the higher number is going to be the positive one. And then you could check it, and you have -2x and 5x, which would be 3. So that would be my complete factorization for this. And then for D, well, I noticed that I got 3 on the term with the highest exponent, so I'm going to try to divide each of these by 3. Then I got 25 minus x squared, and that's a difference of perfect squares. So I know I can factor this. 25 is a perfect square of 5, and then x squared is a perfect square of x times x. And no middle term, because the -5x and 5x will cancel out. So these are a couple more of your basic ones. These are more Algebra 1 type of factoring. We're going to try a harder one on the other side now. And the one we're going to look at is going to be exercise 5. Now, on exercise 5, I'm not really going to go step by step like this one's set up. They give you a couple of guesses, but again, you'll notice that the middle one's got to be 5. So when I check these, those guesses don't end up actually working. So I don't end up getting a positive 5x in either of these cases. So there's one way you can do this to help you and kind of save you some time with guessing, because there's so many different possibilities. I'm going to write down that trinomial. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use something which I was taught. It's called the borrow payback. So some teachers call it the borrow payback method. And the idea is you're borrowing a number that's being multiplied, and then you just got to make sure you pay it back. And when we pay back is factor it back out the end. So what you can try to do is you take the number in front and you multiply it by the last number. So I'm taking this right here and I'm changing it to x squared plus 5x minus 24. Now, the goal of this is to make this a little easier to factor. So if I take this, I can factor this easier. And for this one, I can do x plus 8 and x minus 3. Now, I did have a 4 to start. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take 4 and I'm going to put it in the front of each of the parentheses in front of the x. Now, what I'm trying to do at this point is I'm trying to figure out, I'm just going to write this down below again. I have to pay back 4. So I'm looking at the first set of parentheses and I noticed I can divide each of those numbers by 4. So in the case of this, I have a 4 that comes out in front. I have x plus 2, and then I have 4x minus 3. Now I'm going to cross out this 4 because that's the 4 I multiplied earlier. So that's the 4 I'm paying back. That's my payback. So in this case, this would be my factored form. So let's try another one. If you look at A, I'm going to take the 6 and borrow that 6. So I'd have x squared minus 13x plus 36. Now again, I'm trying to think of numbers that will multiply to 36. So in this case, well, for 36, 6 and 6 would be my first instinct, but I noticed I got 13, so I'm not going to get 13 with 6 and 6 with adding and subtracting. So then I'm going to try, in this case, I'm going to try 9 and 4. Because it's a negative middle term, I'm going to put negatives on each of those. Now what I have to do is I got to put those 6's back in. And again, my goal is to pay back 6. So I noticed in my first set of parentheses, I can divide each of those by 3. And the second set of parentheses, I can divide each of those by 2. So what that means is I'm going to have, and I'm going to write this over to the side, I'm going to have a 3 and a 2 that I'm going to put in front, that are going to be factored out. And then in the parentheses, I'm going to have 2x minus 3, and I'm going to have 3x minus 2. Now the 6, the 3 times 2, is going to be crossed out, because that's what I'm going to pay back. So this will be my factored form of what we just talked about. And I can always check it, because I have a negative 9 and a negative 4, and that negative 9, negative 4 is negative 13. So this borrow payback allows you to kind of simplify the trinomial and get rid of that first number, which will in turn help you eliminate guesses that you might have to make. So as you look at the questions, and if you do see a number greater than 1, think about using that if you don't see anything that kind of jumps out at you.